Very good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out. My name is Sean Gaskell, and I'll be sharing the West African Kora with you. The Kora usually has 21 or 22 strings. It is an instrument that is native to the Mandinka people living in the countries of Gambia, Senegal, Mali, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone, and Cote d'Ivoire. So all are tucked into the northwestern corner of the continent of Africa. And I had the privilege of studying the Kora over the course of 3 visits to Gambia, and I worked with 2 teachers while I was there. And so most of the songs that I'll be playing for you are songs that I learned directly from them, and the songs date anywhere between 50 and 800 years old. And you'll get to learn a lot about the Kora during the program. So between the songs, I'll be sharing about how the Kora is built, like the materials that you use to build it, like the events that you'll see it played at, the people who typically play it, and I'll also share about some of my own personal experiences that I had while I was there. And then right before the last song, I'll go ahead and open up the floor for any questions that y'all might have. This first one is a traditional song called Alalake. And this one dates back to around the late 1700s, and it's a celebration song. So it's basically saying the good work has been done, and those who are responsible, they should be celebrated. And I do most of my singing in the Mandinka language, so that for this song, that's literally what a lot of it translates to. So, Alalake. This one is called Mali Sajo, and it's a song from the country of Mali. The word Sajo is the Mandinka word for the hippopotamus. And so this is a folk story, it's not a true one, of a woman that was said to have fallen in love with a hippopotamus. Malisa, Bafulambe, Malisa, Josa, Malisa, yeah, Malisa, Josa, Malisa, Bafulambe, Malisa, Josa, Malisa. Alinga mutafe, hey mutafe, alinga mutafe, alinga mutafe. Alinga mutafe, hey mutafe, alinga mutafe, alinga mutafe. myself, and it's called Somanda. Somanda is the Mandinka word for morning, like the time of day. And I wrote this song about 8 years ago when I was getting up very early in the morning for work, which at that time was to be doing trail maintenance and construction work in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in western North Carolina. Somanda. Kora was first known to have existed in the early 1700s, but as I mentioned before, a lot of the music goes back 800 years to the founding of the Mandinka Empire in the mid-13th century. And so the Kora is the youngest of the three instruments that are native to the Mandinka, and the other two often get played with the Kora. One of the instruments is called the balafon, which is a wooden xylophone that gets played with one mallet in each hand. And the other is the ngoni, which is a lute. It's only about this long and it's played like a guitar. But with the Kora here, you can see that there's quite a few things that go into making one. So down at the bottom of the instrument, there is a calabash, which is a gourd that grows like a pumpkin. So to use it for the Kora, you would cut it in half and de-seed it, and there's a bunch of like wet material inside that needs to be discarded of. And then the calabash gets dried in the sun for a couple of weeks up to a month, just depending on the time of year that you're building it. So once it's nice and dried out, you would then take a wet animal skin and stretch it over the open half, and then nail it to the round side with upholstery tacks. And that would dry for a little while, and you would cut 3 holes into the calabash, and 2 of those holes are so that the neck that I'm holding on to can slide through both the top and the bottom of the calabash down here. And then the 3rd hole serves 2 very important roles. The first is so that sound can come out, and the second is so that money can go in. And so the reason money goes into this hole, there's a very important cultural context for that. That happens at a lot of these events that you see the Kora at, and I'm going to get into why that is a little bit later. So down here, we have an iron ring. To get that through, you just take a drill and put a hole through and slide the ring through the hole, and then take some nylon rope and wrap it through the loop of the ring and around the back of the neck. At the end of the performance, if you want to take a closer look at all this, you're more than welcome to come up. So with the iron ring, once that's on, the anchor strings get attached to those, and then the plucking strings get tied off to the anchor strings. And finally, the plucking strings get tied off to these tuning rings along the neck that are called conso in Mandinka. This bridge here is not actually fixed to the instrument, so if I was going to bring all the tuning rings down and loosen all the strings, the bridge would just come off of the instruments. 2 handlebars here and 1 cross piece. So these obviously serve for being held to stabilize the instrument while you play. And while you're playing, all the playing is done by just the thumbs and the index fingers. So just 4 fingers total.
Is that kind of tricky on the thumbs?
A little bit. It's not. I would say the index fingers are more tricky because the pitch is higher, and so that's where a lot of the improvisation takes place. Was that?
I know the thumbs were going fairly fast.
Yeah, a little bit. So, so let's see. There's quite a few differences between the 2 Koras that I have here with me. This one's a traditional Kora. So this is the model that you would most often see if you're in any of those countries that I mentioned earlier. The one behind me here is built in the States. And so the main differences in the construction of the 2 are the type of animal skin that's used, the wood materials, string materials, and the tuning system. So for this Kora here, we're using cow skin. That's what's traditionally been used for the whole life of the Kora. The wood comes from a tree called Keno, which is up in northwest Africa, south of the Sahara. The strings are fishing line. Fishing line's been used since the early 1920s. And then before that, they would use antelope hide, the skin of the antelope. And lastly, the tuning system here with the conso. So each string gets wrapped around maybe 4 or 5 times, tied off with a regular square knot. And then to tune, you would physically have to move each of these tuners up or down the neck. And the tension of the conso rests on the back side. So to release that tension, you would have to push up on the front side. So that would release the tension. And then you can move each of them a little bit more freely. And you really don't have to move them that far at all. Maybe just like a millimeter or 2 to change the pitch. And this Kora here, this one was built in the States, and it uses elk skin instead of cow skin. The wood is a combination of Padauk and Honduras mahogany. The strings, rather than being fishing line, are harp strings. That provides a very different sound quality, as you're about to discover here. And then lastly, with the tuning, it's pretty much what you would do with a guitar. You just have to twist each of the pegs and the pitch will change. This one's called Tabara, and this one comes from around the early 1800s. It's dedicated to a woman named Tabara Njai, and The song was dedicated to her by the people in the town where she lived because of how much she was respected. Tabara.
La hilala tabara, hilala hilala tabara, la hilala hilala tabara, hilala hilala. La hilala tabara, hilala hilala tabara, tabara kusiye tabara kusiye, tabara kusiye. La hilala tabara, hilala hilala tabara, la hilala hilala tabara, hilala hilala. Thank you. I learned the words to this one from my teacher's daughter, Bintu. So my teacher is Morba Kuyate, and his daughter is Bintu Kuyate. And she was 12 when she taught me these words, my last visit in 2018. And so it's called Ninkube Keledi, and the words to the song basically mean when you're meeting someone for the very first time, you think very highly of them and you would like to get to know them better. Ninkube Keledi. menyalemo Ninkume keleni Ninkume nyalemo Tulomba sobe Laila ilala Tulomba sobe Laila ilala Ninkume keleni Ninkume nyalemo Ninkume keleni Ninkume nyalemo Tulomba sobe Laila hailala Tulomba sobe Laila hailala Ninkume keleni 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 Thanks.
So the people who play these instruments are usually part of the Mandinka ethnic group, but not always. They may be of the Fulani people, the Jola, the Serer, the Wolof, all of which have people who live in Gambia and the surrounding countries. So the people who play these instruments are what some might consider to be a class system that exists. Historically, people have been born into families that do certain things for work throughout their entire lineage, dating back a long time. And so some of these types of work are things that we have here. However, the people who play these, we don't have an equivalent here. And so these people I speak of are called griots, spelled G-R-I-O-T-S in the plural form. And a griot is a historian.
and it's their cultural responsibility to carry forth the history dating all the way back to the founding of the Mandinka Empire. And the Kora is most culturally significant because they use it as the primary medium for telling about their history through a lot of these traditional songs. So there are people that have a song named after them because they may have like been a heroic battle figure, if you will, having fought to expand the empire. There are songs about the battles themselves, about places and locations that were strategic in the Mandinka expansion. People write their own songs as well, so that's quite common. When I was in Gambia, I would see the Kora played mainly at 3 types of events, and one was very casual and laid back, and the other 2 were very formal. It was rare to see the Kora perform solo, like you're seeing now at any events. They would usually be accompanied by other instruments, like the balafon, that wooden xylophone we mentioned earlier, the ngoni, but also guitars, some drums occasionally, like the djembe drums. And if it was a casual event inside of a family's home, that might happen like once or twice a month inside of a griot, family's home I should specify. And so you would have a few instruments and people would hang out for 3 or 4 hours and just have a nice time. And so in these extended family compounds where the events would take place, 7 to 35 people would be living with each other, and that's how everyone lived. Not just the griots, but everyone that I knew. So you'd have a nuclear family that would have like a couple of rooms to themselves, and that'd be adjacent to other nuclear families, and that would kind of be on the exterior walls, still on the inside of the compound, and those rooms would be covered, but then the central part would be like a courtyard, open air, and that's where a lot of the music would take place. They just put out chairs and benches and things like that, and there may be food involved. So with weddings and naming ceremonies, those are the 2 formal events where I would often see this at. And a naming ceremony is a 3-part event. It's for a newborn child, and it happens exactly 1 week after they're born. There's no deviation from that standard whatsoever. And so the first part would be where they name the child, and then they'd have a feast afterwards, and then some music. And the naming itself would be held in the home where the mother of the child had spent her childhood. So it might be flipped the other way around in that, I should say, she would usually be living with her husband's extended family at this point in life, but it might also be flipped the other way around. The husband may have moved in with the wife's extended family. And so there, at this part of the event, there'd be a griot who would be on a bullhorn saying praise for the newborn, for the parents and the family, just kind of bringing up well wishes. And another griot would be standing next to him, like oftentimes telling him what to say through the bullhorn, like word for word. Never could really quite figure out why that was, but this griot, the one telling the other guy what to say, would often kind of walk back and forth between the audience and collect cash donations to then give to the parents. And I would look out and I'd see groups of 4 and 5 people in this audience, which may be anywhere between 75 and 200 in number. And they'd be deliberating over what to name the child. So it was a very communal process, this naming was. And so after a couple of hours of that, just kind of going back and forth with the audience, the name would be announced. That would be final. And they'd move on to the feasts. And food, whether it be at a special event or not, would be served in large bowls that 4 to 8 people would sit around and share from together. Eating was typically done with your right hands. You could use utensils that were readily available. I found it easier to use my hand like everyone else, just based on how the food was served. So in these bowls you would have at the bottom cooked white rice, and then with like a palm oil based sauce that had different spices that were ground up and kind of cooked into it. Vegetables, cooked vegetables. Some of the more common ones would be carrots, cabbage, eggplant, cassava, leeks, onions, things like that. Bell peppers, habanero peppers even for some kick. And then with meats, it would be chicken or fish most often, but you would sometimes see beef or goat for a special event usually. And so like all the veggies, they'd be steamed or just cooked on a fry pan. My host family cooked over an open flame, like on a grate that would set everything, like whether it's the soup pot or the frying pan on the grate above the fire. And so like a cabbage, for instance, would get cut into quarters, and one quarter would go with one bowl, and vice versa, or just so on and so forth, depending on how many bowls were going out to people. And like carrots might only get cut in half. Like you might have a half of an eggplant sitting right there, kind of chopped up a little bit. But and then with fish, they'd actually wrap a whole entire raw fish in tinfoil, cook it above that fire, and then that whole fish would just go with one bowl. So like you'd be looking at the fish would be looking right back at you, waiting to be eaten. And so you basically just take your right hand and pick and choose, and then mix it in with that palm oil saturated rice, and it kind of created a nice sticky ball, and away you went. And then the music was the final part, and the music was sort of like the after party. And unlike the actual ceremony during the day, you did not have to have an invite from the host family to come. Like if you heard the music from like 2 or 3 compounds down, or even a quarter-mile away, like you'd walk into the home where it was, and they would just invite you in for the evening. And the musicians that you would see here often would make their living going around and doing these. So there are 4 members within the family that I stayed with and studied Kora with, who teamed up with 4 members from the griot family next door, and they played probably 3 to 4 of these events a week, weddings, naming ceremonies. And so in order to get paid, they really had to like engage with the audience. And I should also mention that this band had, in addition to like a Kora, balafon, drums, and a jelly musso, which literally translates to female griot, and she'd be the lead singer. They also had electric guitars, electric bass, like a drum set that you'd see in a jazz band or a rock band, synthesizer-style keyboards, and they'd get plugged into this huge 64-channel sound mixer that would get channeled into 2 amplifiers that were like 10 times the size of this one behind me here. And because of that, it carried more of the feeling of a rock concert. And people would get up and dance often. And so in order to earn their keep, if you will, they'd really have to connect with the audience. And so maybe the second or the third song in, it might be about a particular person, and then either the lead Kora player or the jelly musso would start singing praise for whoever the song was about. And oftentimes it was someone who had passed on some 100 of years ago. And they'd back up for a while and just hear the melody, because these songs would go on for 20 minutes, a half hour maybe. So I'm just giving you a very brief version of each of these. And so when the singer came in for the second time, they would be metaphorically going fishing, meaning they're trying to figure out if anyone in the audience is a direct descendant of the song bearer. And what they might be saying would kind of flow out to the extent of, let me just imagine for a sec, the name of the song is Frank Jones. So the singer would say, like, all right, anyone out there from Frank Jones' family? Back in the year 1485, here are these 3 things that Frank did for our people that was so important. They lived in this area at this time, and they knew people who fought in these battles to help expand the empire, and this is what's happened since then to make sure that the Jones lineage is where they are now, and this is why they're so important. Anyone out there that is a descendant or within the Jones lineage, please come up and show your respects in the form of cash payments. And so the reason why this cash exchange takes place is really because the people value the fact that the griots are the safekeepers of their history. They can literally ask for someone's last name and just be able to start telling them 800 years worth of their family history. And all of this is passed down orally over the years. And the fact that they're able to do that means a great deal to the people. And they really want to see that their culture is preserved and that the griots are financially supported for being the safekeepers. So, speaking of participation, I'm hoping y'all can help me out on this next song. This one is called Tir Makan, and it's an 800-year-old tune. There's a call and response singing that goes along with this. It's a battle song for a man named Tir Makan. And the 3-word response line that I want you to sing with me is in Nandika. Translated means, the enemy did not succeed at piercing Tir Makan with the swords. So, for starters, please say, if you will, each of the 3 words after me one at a time. The first word is Susa.
Susa.
The second word is Rejo. And the third word is the name of the song, the name of the person. Tira Makan. Tira Makan. Good. Now say, Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Good. And it sounds like this when it's sung. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. So now I'm going to sing it and I want you to sing it back to me. It goes, Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Your turn. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. My turn. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Good. So that's the response. The call lines, there's 3 of them that I'm going to sing to lead us into that. And the first part is Amuru Yebang Tira Makan. That means the enemy tried to pierce Tira Makan with the swords. And then responds with Susa Rejo Tira Makan. I'll say Kelike Muru Yebang Tira Makan. So Kelike is a person basically saying the sword is near. And then respond again. And lastly, last call line is Ifa Tira Makan, Iba Tira Makan. So it's the father and the mother of Tira Makan are wishing him well. That's it. So let's try it. I'll guide you in. It goes. Muru Yebang Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Kelike Muru Yebang Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Iba Tira Makan. Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Iba Tira Makan. Iba Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Good. That's it. So that's the walkthrough part. We'll mix it in with the Kora, or Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Kelike Muru Yebang Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Iba Tira Makan. Ifa Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Iba Tira Makan. Ifa Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Muru yibam tira makan, susare jo tira makan, kelke muru yibam tira makan, susare jo tira makan, iba tira makan, ifa tira makan, susare jo tira makan, iba tira makan, susare jo tira makan. Susare jo tira makan, kelke muru yibam tira makan. Susare jo tira makan, iba tira makan, ifa tira makan. Susare jo tira makan, iba tira makan. Susare jo tira makan. Susare jo tira makan, kelke muru yibam tira makan. Susare jo tira makan, iba tira makan, ifa tira makan. Susare jo tira makan, ifa tira makan. Susare jo tira makan. Thank you. So I was first introduced to the Kora about 16 years ago, and I literally came across it in a live performance. Absolutely loved the sound and just decided that I wanted to learn how to play. And so I talked with the performer that night. His name was Kane Mathis, and found out he was willing to teach. After talking with him that evening, I decided to figure out how to acquire a Kora at that point. And that was not an easy task. You pretty much have to go to West Africa or know someone who's been. And so a few months later, I found my first one and started going up to Kane's place and taking lessons once every couple of months. And then about a year and a half later, I took my first of 3 trips to Gambia in 2008. And Kane put me in touch with the 2 teachers that I worked with. He had been there a few times before me. And so the Gambian teachers' names were Morba Griot. He was the son of my second teacher, the late Malami Jabate, who passed away between my second and third visits. And I would say they taught me Kora combined between the 2 of them anywhere between 4 and 8 hours a day. And they not only taught me, their host family took care of me like I was family. And when I first went, it was a phone call basically introducing myself and saying that I wanted to learn how to play Kora, and they told me that they would be there at the airport to pick me up whenever I was ready to come. And they fed me really well and just looked after me in every possible way that you can think of. So for that, I owe them a great deal. And that said, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this. So thanks. We're going to do one more song, but yeah, now's a great time for questions.
Are you partitioning the melody and the bass line by hand? It looks like you're playing the melody mostly in your left.
Yeah, I would say the melody for me, it's different for everyone. So the melody for me is more in that bass and mid-range, which I played more with my thumbs. The higher notes are further away from me and therefore played by the index fingers, and that's where I tend to do most of the improvising. So like the notational structure of one of these, the lowest 4 notes are on the left side of the bridge. So we've got 11 strings on this side of the bridge, 11 strings on the other side. So the lowest 4 pitches on the instrument are on the left side of the bridge closest to you. And then once you get to those 4, to keep going higher up the scale, you would alternate with a right digit and a left digit as you go further away from you. So, and like the 2 octaves, basically meaning like 2 notes of the same pitch, just arranged apart. They're not like right across from each other on the bridge, so it really, just to get used to going up and down the scale itself, to feel comfortable with that, took me like 4 years or so.
The kalimba works the same way.
But it's not a western
Sorry.
scale.
The kalimba works the same way, the alternate.
Yeah, I'm not sure which, I'm semi-familiar with the kalimbas, but, yeah.
Because, the tuning sounds approximately Western.
Yeah, it's diatonic, so meaning 7 notes per scale. The do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So it's like the same concept on the Kora here. So you can play really easily with other instruments, pianos, guitars, things like that. So.
Did you play another instrument before you went to
Yeah, I grew up playing clarinets. Most common instrument to transition from.
it? I thought something.
Yeah, no, I
Strings.
didn't start playing guitar until after I found the Kora.
And when you got there, the host family, I mean, how many Americans were there?
During that first visit, I didn't run into hardly anyone. The second visit, there was actually another American staying in the compound with me. Like, we didn't travel together,
Right.
we were just both there. Like, I would say I'm running with more American Peace Corps workers than anything else, but yeah, not really anyone in the host family's place. So, yeah, it was an experience. Do you have a question?
So, cultural thing. And so, if they have a battle and they win the battle, do those people become then part of the tradition, or is that they have a special place for them where they talk, where they do the history thing you talked about?
Yeah. I think it all, no matter who won or lost necessarily, I think it all becomes part of the oral history at that point, and it all gets passed down. Names, events, all that still stays part of the history. So, yeah.
When you were there and attending the parties afterwards, did they invite you to come and play with them?
Yes. At that point, I was still really shy about it. Like, I got a lot of invites my second trip in particular, to the point where there was one music festival in the Casamance region of Senegal, which sits just south of Gambia. And my teacher literally threw me up on stage, like in front of 300 people, just to say, all right, you got this, just go. I'm not coming up there, you got this. So, I think I played like 2 songs, but so I did get to play in front of others.
And you found people to be very friendly and very outgoing and.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very warm,
Yeah.
very accepting, just very hospitable and.
Because I went to South Africa once and over to Victoria Falls and.
Oh, yeah.
People, they loved, I mean,
Yeah.
they were so wonderful to us.
Yeah,
I felt like I was home.
Yeah.
So that's why I was interested in these homey questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hospitality was like nothing I've ever
If you had
experienced.
to be buried with one, it'd be that one and not that one, would it?
What's that?
If you had to be buried with one, it
Oh.
would be that one.
Yeah, this one's, I brought this home from my last trip, so.
How much do you weigh?
Me?
No, it.
Oh, like 12 pounds probably.
Oh, that's heavier.
Yeah, that one's a little heavier. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to go ahead and give you one more song. If you do want to take a closer look at the Kora, after we're done here, feel free to come up. And I do have CDs available for sale. They're $15. You can take cash, check, credit card, digital payments even, if you have any of those. So there's a briefcase with the CDs, and to the right, there's a little plastic tub where you can put cash or check. If you want to pay with a credit card, do come see me, and we can work that out. I also have an email list on the table, and I use that specifically to let people know of the next time that I'm in the area. I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina, and I'm doing tour libraries in Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Connecticut. So probably be back up this way in June, but I'm still looking at events for that. So thank you so much all for coming out. I'm going to wrap up with another composition of mine that's called Smoky Mountain Sunset. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again at some point. So,
Thank you.
thanks.